Hi, I'm Alison Carmichael from Peace in Our Name, and we're joined today by Janis Hetherington. Janis was the first lesbian in Britain to conceive by artificial insemination and is the author of Love Lies Bleeding, Memoirs of a Sexual Revolutionary. Hello, welcome, Janis.
Hi, lovely to see you, Alison.
Yeah. I'd just like to dive right in here and ask a few questions about your book and also about some of your other humanitarian and activism. How long did it take you to find a publisher who was prepared to take on this warts and all book?
Well, believe it or not, it was about 35 years because loads of people wanted me to do a kiss and tell story because of my notorious past, etc. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do a warts and all and an in-depth understanding of not just my sexuality, but beyond my sexuality, all the things that had surrounded me. And people were quite frankly frightened of libel. They were frightened of the atmosphere at the time. And I actually found a wonderful woman, Fadwa Fadel, who took me on straight away, and because she had also been involved in the Middle East, she was originally born in Iraq, it was a brilliant situation where she understood exactly, and it was important because obviously a lot of the emphasis that I work on at the moment for Peace in Our Name is understanding for women and to give women a voice throughout the Middle East. So I mean, she acted as a Middle Eastern woman as my voice, which was fantastic.
Oh, that is wonderful. I mean, do you think that the situation then, I mean, obviously this is about LGBT before LGBT existed as a concept, and people were very isolated. I mean, how does this feel for you now in today's opening up of LGBT rights?
Well, for a start, there wasn't such a thing as LGBT. I mean, you were queer, you were lesbian, you were a dyke, or you were butch, or you were femme. So you had all different, very derogative labels, if you like. And you were basically looked on as second-class citizens. And if you were in, say, a teaching profession or in a doctor's profession, or even as a nurse, if you were in any profession that required you to have intimate contact with minors or with the same sex, you were frowned upon, and quite frankly, you lost your job. And please don't forget that in 1966, before 1966, and I came out long before that, in 1966, a man could be sent to prison for a considerable amount of time just for being with a man, kissing in public, or even in an intimate relationship inside his own home. So although it is 50 years ago, just over 50 years ago, it is frightening to think that it's taken that long to be able to get this far. And of course, it is only in this country and in America, although America is slipping back now because of the evangelical movement, but it is only in this country, really, and Europe, that people are beginning to see homosexuality, meaning both sex, really, as the umbrella of both male and female, as something that is, if not the norm, at least completely acceptable. And I've been very, very happy to meet very young people. Obviously, I'm old enough to be their grandmother, but they have such an advanced attitude towards freedom of sexual expression in this country that it's wonderful. But like everything else, they meet people from other countries, particularly in Africa, and they are absolutely appalled and shocked to find that people in Africa are still being put into prison. Yeah. Their families completely and absolutely have nothing to do with them. They are pariahs, and they're basically going through the same sort of thing that we went through 50 years ago, and I find that appalling.
Well, I think that it's interesting you should say that, because also, I mean, obviously, as you know, that I went through a very similar kind of direction as you did in the 80s. So 20 years after you, I was an LGBT activist before LGBT existed in London in the 80s, and I do think it is incredible the fact that we are at this place right now, and how pulling the rest of the world into this sense of freedom is very important, obviously. And your book is absolutely in the forefront of that. I mean, a sexual revolutionary. I wondered, do you feel that you were really a kind of a pioneer for the lesbian and gay parenting as well?
Well, you only have to read the chapters on the fact that I had to go to court. I had questions asked in Parliament. I mean, they threatened Rhodes Boyson, who was a revolting MP, Tory MP, threatened if I didn't expose the name of the doctor who inseminated me, that I'd be thrown into the clink. I mean, things were actually very, very difficult. And it wasn't expected that you were going to have children as same-sex couples. And I noticed today in the paper that young diver, Daly, he's just going to have a child with his male partner. And it's treated as wonderful news, fantastic. Ours was treated, my news was treated, as if I was going to give birth to a monster with two little devil's horns, and that I was, to mention one person on a program I did, Brass Tacks, that I was opening a whole Pandora's box of evil. And, those are things. I was in my late 20s, and to have to actually go through that. And in those days, you didn't have any support groups or anything like that. So, yes, I do. I'm very proud to have been a pioneer.
As an older lesbian, you have mentioned earlier that you could be the grandmother of this movement.
Well, I'm 72. I mean, that's my age. That's hardly, anyone who reads my book knows perfectly well that I'm very honest about my age and my foibles.
Well, do you think that there are special difficulties for older lesbians and gay men or LGBT, transgender people in today? That we need to recognise as perhaps younger or even younger than me. Obviously, I could be the mother of the movement, but that there are things that are specific to your generation that we need to be taking care of.
Well, unfortunately, one of the things that doesn't happen is you don't get younger, and you don't stop having arthritis, and you don't stop having wrinkles. So it gives us the same things as everyone else, and as Shakespeare would have said, prick us and we bleed. Yes, those things happen, but nowadays, obviously the big worry before the Acts came in to allow same-sex marriage and same-sex partnerships was that if you went into a hospital and your partner was dying or needed to sign something, you were not counted as a next of kin.
Right.
So those things are an advantage. But I still get the sort of stigma in a kind of way if I go to a party or something, that there's all that, oh gosh, that was brave of you all those years ago. So you sort of, instead of just melding into the background, as you sometimes would like to do at my age, you're sort of put on a pedestal. So although that was maybe lovely and charming, sort of 10 years ago, I'm at the age where I would just like to meld into the background and not so much emphasis put on it. But if you handle your affairs properly, and you have a good solicitor, and you do make sure that your affairs are in order, please do that. Then it takes the worry out of if anything happens to you. And obviously, people who've got pension pots and things like that, that please do go and sort those out and make sure you're covered. But growing old gracefully, no, disgracefully.
Good woman. I mean, I'd like to come to the fact that you're an LGBT rights activist, but you're also a humanitarian with very strong pro-Palestinian leanings. You work very hard for the Middle East. I was just wondering, could you tell us a little bit about what's happening in Palestine and why you feel so strongly about this?
Well, I have felt strongly for the last 40 years, having met many Palestinians and grown very fond of their culture, very fond of their way of life, and the fact that they are so discriminated about in their own land. And of course, they're part of a huge diaspora because many left their land because they were so discriminated about. It worries me very, very much at the moment with the escalation of war. I heard this morning that there is every possibility that Israel will go to war with Lebanon yet again. And the fact that the arms are still being sent to Israel absolutely terrifies me. And the fact that it's very, very difficult now to say words like Zion and to explain that in a logical way without being slapped off Facebook. It's terrifying that there is lack of freedom of speech when what we're basically talking about is fact. I mean, and I'm very grateful that we have this piece in our name, because it gives Palestinians a voice as well. And those Palestinians, some of them are in diaspora, some of them are not. We have a lot of Jewish writers who are absolutely appalled about what is happening in their own land, as they call it, but it's a land that they want to share. And they have, some of them have been brought up there and rebelled against what is happening in basically what is a police state. And that is a terrifying thing. Needless to say, there are beatings every day of Palestinians. There are people who are thrown in jail when they are literally just children.
Well, that's right. That's Al-Had Tamimi, today.
And those are things that worry me tremendously. And on a humanitarian basis, I just feel that the world is being silent, although thankfully with sites like ours, we're able to give people a voice.
I think that's right. I mean, have a voice to the voiceless. It's one of the things that you've talked about a lot to me, that we share on our website. I think I wouldn't be out of order when, quoting someone like, Miko Peled and now there's like Ilan Papp, when they are very clear on the subject as Israelis, that this, or Palestinians, as Miko Peled would call himself, that there's an apartheid there, an apartheid system, worse, according to Mandela, than the one in South Africa. So, do you face even more kind of pressure back on yourself as an LGBT activist because you support the Palestinians in their apartheid situation?
I don't think I suffer that because I'm well known, and I'm not a self-effacing type of person. I know I'm well known enough for people to be able to accept what I say is not just a fad, but from a long experience. And also, I think that people like Rania Hamid, who is a writer for our site, who has some brilliant articles on our site, is somebody who puts it very succinctly. I mean, you don't have to read a book or a huge tome. If you listen to her beautiful words and her knowledge, it gives you in a small number of phrases exactly what is happening and what has been happening basically since the Balfour Declaration, which it's a 100-year And it's just disgusting that people don't still understand that it wasn't ours. This land of Israel, which is Palestine, was not ours to give away.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things I find very striking about what you're doing in a way, Janis, because it is about being a voice, being a voice for the unheard people, and in essence, you wrote a book for the people who weren't being heard, and now you're helping run a website for the voice of the people who are not being heard, and I would wonder how. I mean, obviously you've answered the question of whether or not it's affected your life directly, being a pro-Pal activist. But if we come back to Love Lies Bleeding, it was a very controversial topic even when you were writing it. I mean, the LGBT community has actually just kind of blossomed very, very, very recently almost. It's in terms of the history of activism. But would you say that you were still held back from talking about things that maybe were considered libelous, or that people in high places would not have wanted you to speak out?
Well, quite obviously, because the early part of the book deals with my early life, and at that particular period of time I was involved in managing a brothel, as one does. And as if that wasn't controversial enough, I went through many court cases. I was at the Old Bailey when I was 21 years old. We won those court cases because it was quite obvious that the police, although we were running a brothel, the police were setting up what we were charged with. And it was one of those terrible periods of time in British justice or injustice, where if a policeman said something against you and said that was what was going on, they were believed. I mean, we could have gone to prison I could have gone to prison for 7 years. So, it was a very difficult period of time. I was very honest and very honest about, in the first few chapters of the book, of that particular period. However, I grew out of it very, very quickly. I was bored with it. It became something that was a stepping stone. But during that period of time, I was also involved with a person who was in the singing business, and with all the corruption that went on. And of course, you now hear of all these cases coming up where people are saying, well, this happened to me in 1917, this happened to me. Well, we knew it was going on. Everybody knew it was going on. It wasn't a secret. If you wanted to get on in show business, you either shagged your way there or you did the blowjobs all the way there. You were an object, and very, very, very few people made it just on talent.
Yep. Well, we haven't really got very much time now, Janis, but it was a very exciting conversation. I'm blown away by your your dedication, your energy, your enthusiasm, and your incredible support. And obviously, we work together in so many ways, and it is a real honour for me to be your colleague and to be your friend. So thank you so much.
Can I say something about you, Alison? One of the most talented women I have ever met, one of the most honest women that I have ever met, one of the nicest families that I ever had the privilege to be involved with, and long may us, you and I, work together and do those things that we care about, which is just simply give women and the world and those that need it a voice through us and through all the other outlets that we can help. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay.